let me first introduce myself. My name is Tom. I work for Signify. Signify is, well, the world's largest lighting company. If you don't know the name Signify, that may be because the name is actually quite recent. We used to belong to Philips. We're actually the origin of Philips, famous Dutch company for lighting. And today I want to talk to you about what is the easiest way to make your office smart, or at least to take a really important opportunity which is there for the next coming years. If we look at the office market, and I'm sure you will all recognize it, or maybe it has already been touched upon in previous presentations, that we see really that there is a turning point for the office sector. On the one hand, we see that flexible work model is really accelerating because we all had to do it at the same time, right? But also, on the other hand, we see that actually the use of the office is getting a redefinition. Before I go into what the role of a lighting system can be in there, I want to link it to the big trends that we see in office, and that's first of all a really big call for climate action. That's not only touching offices, that's really touching all of us and all in real estate. We have a higher attention to health and well-being. There's much more evidence on how a healthy building is important for us at the workplace. And of course, we want that office or at workplace to be more and more flexible. We have hybrid working, we have collaborative working, we have concentration working. We need a lot of flexibility built into that office. Now, the technology to support a strategy that is linking to those trends is, of course, a smart building. That's great, but the problem is, how fast can we deploy smart buildings? It's quite an investment. I mean, we see in new builds more and more that buildings are smart by design. But if you really look at the whole portfolio of office spaces, there's still a lot to go, and it will take a long time before everyone can enjoy the benefits of such a smart building. Oops, I didn't know there was. If I look at a local trend as well, and I'm giving a local example. I am from Belgium, but I do work for a Dutch company. In the Netherlands, legislation is, I must say, a little bit ahead of Belgium on how to make also legislation that those offices are more sustainable, that they reach a certain energy efficiency and a certain carbon footprint. And then we see in the Dutch market, but this is true for any country in Europe or probably in the world, is that a lot of those offices are not yet up to the standards that they need to be. And this is where lighting can come in, is because lighting itself, around 10 years ago, we had a big shift in technology going from what we call conventional lighting, and for an office that would be typically a TL type of tube, to LED lighting, which is the standard in new builds for almost 10 years. But if you really look at all the buildings that are existing, over 50% are not yet on LED lighting. Now, why is this such a big opportunity on energy saving? And that is because if you do make that shift from conventional lighting to an LED system, and I stress system because it's not only the energy efficiency of the lighting source itself, it's also adding sensors so you can detect whether people are there. So you can also detect how sunny the day is, so you would need less power from the lighting close to the windows. If you put all that technology together, which is also standard in new build, you save up to 70% on your lighting alone. Now, a lot of companies have not been doing that yet, because they've only been looking at it from a return on investment. Of course, a new lighting system is quite an investment, and then if you have the saving on energy for an office, which have the burning hours are between 8 and 6, let's say, that it can take up to maybe 5, 6, 7 years before you have that return on investment. So that's why there's still a lot of buildings that need that update. But if you look at that from the perspective of carbon footprint KPIs, then all of a sudden updating your LED is the most low-hanging fruit that you can do, because you have a lot of result with actually quite a low monetary investment, and also quite an easy installation, because you don't really need to close the office or open up the ceiling. You can actually do that by just replacing the luminaires which are there. Now, the good news is also, it's not only to look backwards, but I would challenge everyone to also look forward and then choose. If you need to choose your LED anyway, I would urge everybody to think like whether they should also consider connected lighting, because connected lighting is actually the most efficient way to make your entire building smart. Now, why is that? Is because light can be, actually, it's not about light, but it's about the light infrastructure, can be the digital backbone for a smart building. And there's three good reasons for that, which I call the three P's to make it memorable. It's the place of a light source. Where is the light source? It's at the ceiling. Isn't the ceiling also a great place to put a lot of sensors to capture data? You have a bird's eye view of what's happening in the room. There's also plenty of light sources. There's typically one every 4 or 5 meters. That really means that you have a really dense grid throughout the entire building, where you can place sensors that capture data. And last but not least, it's already powered. And that's also a big challenge with using sensors that are battery powered. They work great. I mean, there is no doubt about the quality of data that they provide when you do the installation. But of course, the big challenge is how to make it more easy to maintain on the long term. And then battery powered sensors do have a drawback, because at some point it's not about the total of them failing, but one will fail and the next one will fail, and it's just a lot easier if they are already powered by by the light source. This is to give you a really easy overview of what we mean, and actually to not to go into the technical details of it, but to explain how simple the setup actually is. Of course, we have a big array of types of luminaires in all price segments and all types of shapes and forms. But the essence of it is that we have a luminaire, we put a sensor in that luminaire, and I will explain in the next slide that we put a sensor in there which captures a lot more than the lighting system needs. So it's not about optimizing the lighting, it's really about using that space to capture a lot of data. That data goes to a gateway, and the gateway pushes it to the cloud, and via the cloud you have all that data available in dashboards that we can provide, but also that actually in a lot of cases, or in most cases, we would provide to other platforms thanks to APIs. Now, to zoom in our latest generation of sensor, is that what we capture as examples that have nothing to do with optimizing the lighting is that we can capture air quality, or at least the humidity of it. We can capture the sound pressure. And we have a 2D thermopile, which measures temperature, which is, of course, important, but also that raw data gets analyzed in the cloud, so we can know a lot more than only the temperature itself. We also use it to detect occupancy, and also to estimate how many people are in the room. Now, how does that work? If you have a dense grid of sensors which are in the lighting, you actually are able to make a thermal picture. So the thermal picture is measuring my body heat being different from the temperature of the room. And in that way, in a very privacy sensible way, we can know whether a seat is available, and also do calculations on estimates. It's not 100% accurate, but really good estimates on how many people were in a certain room at a certain point. And that database is, of course, super interesting to really do analysis on. So all this data goes to the cloud, is available via APIs, but we can also have it available standard with our own dashboards. Very interesting for organizations who have more and more carbon footprint KPIs. So it's great that you have those KPIs, but how do you measure them? You need data for that, so organizations can really understand how much energy consumption they have been having by building, by room, and have that in a dashboard. Facility managers can have a look at how is my building really being used, so they can optimize the flexible workspace. by looking into those occupancy insights. And then that data can also be pushed to an app, an employee app. And I guess today there's more and more startups also having these types of apps available. And what we offer there is that data that can enhance that app, but we also provide a simple app ourselves to, for example, only to adjust the lighting, which is also a big part of well-being, is the quality of light, but also the personalization, if you desire, of that light based on your age, based on your preference, but also based on the activity that you're doing. You would like to support your activity with different type of light when you're having a meeting versus concentration work versus a brainstorm. A lot is really possible for the individual to simply adjust the lighting like you would do at home by using your phone. Now, the really, I think, game changer of this platform is that actually it is a platform, and it was touched upon in your question, Walter, with the question you asked to Mark as well about the office markets. There is a tension there, and there is a risk to be taken by the owner versus the tenant, and that has to do with the timing of that risk as well. I mean, somebody who invests in a building is investing for a long time, whereas a tenant actually gives a commitment for the short time. And the tipping point we are in with smart buildings is, I guess, it's there, but it's also waiting to tip because of that tension. There's a lot of money and a lot of risk there. And what we offer today and are really making available today is that actually we can split up that investment and we can split up that work and installation as well. So we are able now to provide a lighting system which already existed, which is a lighting system which is using a wireless protocol rather than a wired protocol. That just means that between the luminaires there is a radio frequency that connects the luminaires, which is really useful for existing buildings because that really means that you have a lot lower cost in installation because you don't need to pull wires, you don't need to open the ceiling. It's a very reliable system, has been used for over a decade, and the technology is very common in lighting. But what is the real difference is that it is upgradable. It is upgradable over time, and over time can be in the course of a project. When, for example, when you're building a new build, but the tenant isn't known yet, and you don't know yet if the tenant wants to have it very smart or not smart, but it can also happen afterwards. So this is where we would actually split up the lighting installation and then the upgrade with the advanced sensor and the cloud connection. And that really makes it also separable in budgets, because one is the building budget and the other one can be the IT budget. One can be the investor, the other one can be the tenant as well. So there's a lot more flexibility in achieving a smart building. And this is why I believe that a smart building can be achieved for everybody if we really take the momentum of updating the low-hanging fruit to achieve our carbon footprint goals, or to take a step ahead on those carbon footprint goals. Update your lighting as soon as possible. And when you do update your lighting, actually without an extra cost, and this is really important, is that this system is not more expensive than a more traditional system, but it gives you the freedom for the future. It is in that way also your building is more future ready because it is smart ready. So this is my 10-minute pitch. I really did it quite fast, I must say, but also I wanted to make sure that I have plenty of time to answer questions as well. Let me see how I stop sharing my screen. Yeah, here I'm back.
Yes, you're back, Tom, and myself as well. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. What do you see, where in the world, because of course Signify is a world player, do you see the adoption being the most right now?
Yeah, this is for a Dutch company. I need to tell my colleagues all the time because I work in Belgium and Netherlands, and there's a big difference between those two countries, but it has more to do with Netherlands being more ahead of the curve than Belgium being behind the curve. And it's really is happening a lot in Amsterdam and Eindhoven, I must say. If we look there to the Zuidas, I'm sure you're very familiar with that area.
Yes.
There, one of the biggest, or let's say the most iconic smart buildings, the Edge, also the most marketed smart buildings is there, but it really influenced the rest of that area as well. There's more and more of this technology being used in new build, but also in renovation. And from a Belgian perspective, I already see that with the ambition of new builds. So most of the new builds being put into the market is already designed on smart, and this is happening, I would say, everywhere in the world. So it is a matter of time for this impact to have, and we will see the impact in the rest of the world. I think what we're already seeing in areas like Amsterdam is once your neighbor has it, you know you need it as well, especially in those metropolitan areas, because a big driver is, of course, acquiring the right talent. And if you are looking for the best talent and they all want to go to your neighbor because you provide, it's not about the cool factor of the building, but it is just a more flexible building, a more healthy building, attention to well-being. If I need to choose employees, that really weighs in as a factor, and it's becoming more important. We hear from HR professionals than the, let's say, the fun first impression. Like, of course, you want a cool coffee bar and you want a pool table there, but more importantly for people joining the workforce, especially millennials, is they will question like, how healthy is my workplace? And a smart building is just smarter at using technology to support that strategy.
Yeah, it's also way more transparent because you can just show.
You can show it at the yeah, that's really good to that all these platforms are I would say an open, and it is all API based, so you can you not only use that data to let's say optimize the building directly, but also to analyze the building, but also just to communicate. You communicate to visitors, you communicate to employees what the how energy efficient your building is, how good you're doing, how healthy a room is, and also just communicate with the building.
Yeah, and so the new build buildings or the buildings that needs to be built, well, that's probably easy to implement those new technologies. But how about all those buildings that we have already in all those cities? How are we going to transform them to smart buildings?
Well, all of them, Signify cannot have the answer to that, but we do believe is to take the momentum again. We have market data, right? So we're a lighting company. We are in lighting. We have pretty smart people who estimate how many, what our opportunity is to upgrade to LED. And this is different from type of building and type of environment. But if we look at office buildings, it is, depending on the country, it will be between 50 and 70% of office buildings which are not yet on LED lighting. This will of course be different on premium location versus secondary location. So it's just across. But if you look across, then there is not only a big opportunity to update your sustainability, but there's a big pressure there as well. So we already see that with things like the Green Deal coming up from Europe, local legislation. There is just a big push on updating your buildings. Now, some buildings will be lost and you just need to repurpose them or do deep renovation, but a lot of existing buildings just need to do a little bit of things to do that. And then lighting is a really easy way to do. It's just a matter of getting it done. And when you do it, we try to tell people like, think about that technology has changed the last couple of years, not only for to go smart right away, but also to put your infrastructure ready. And I think that is a big thing about it, because a smart building does have challenges. The amount of decision makers is just a lot bigger. There's an IT component there, which means that somebody who's responsible for IT needs to look into it. Is this okay for privacy? Is this okay for security? How does this impact my way of working? There's another investment there. It's different. There's a lot of change that needs to happen, and a lot of organizations are ready for that. Some organizations are almost ready for that, and I think for those organizations, it should be a no-brainer to just select a different lighting system. It's the same luminaires. It's the same quality of light. It's the same price, because the luminaires itself are not different, but it's a different system. and that system is upgradable to a smart system later on, whether you do that in a couple of months or before the project is really done. So you have been able to talk to all the other stakeholders, or it didn't work and you postpone it until a couple of years, then at least you have that, it is future ready. You still have that window of opportunity, and you will not say in a couple of years, oh, I should have known, I should have listened to Tom, I remember his his keynotes, and I should have gone for a new generation of technology rather than an old generation of technology.
Yeah. So, and then you mentioned already the regulations and the Green Deal in Europe. That's for sure going to push the industry forward. Well, real estate is not that fast to adapt this change. But how do you see as Signify the real estate industry being well, evolving in the last years? And well, we need net zero buildings. We need all that kind of stuff. Everything is in place. The technology is out there. How do you see the industry being changed?
Well, again, if you really look at the industry, meaning developers, we
Yeah,
do see that shift, especially in let's say A locations, larger cities. That's already happening. You don't see it yet in the streets because, of course, there's a long time between saying like this is what I want and then actually opening the building. There's a couple of years in between, right? So that's why I say like what we already see happening, materializing in the Amsterdam area. Other areas are not that far behind. It will just happen when those construction work starts and will finish. I
yeah,
think the biggest challenge is if you look at from a carbon footprint point of view is there's so many buildings which are not in those A locations or which are not with those let's say multinational tenants who already have this HR vision, but also the budgets related to that. I mean, I don't need to tell you that the price per employee in those A locations is very different than in other smaller cities in the Netherlands, for example.
yeah. Well, then last question that I have, you see a lot of new technology companies entering the space, startups, scale-ups. Well, you're of course like a big technology company. How do you look at the change in smart and healthy buildings and all those new players that come into the business?
Well, I'm excited by it, but also it's adding the complexity. And if I look at it from a customer's point of view, it's really about matching the right customer with the right type of company. Because adding a lot of information, you also get into stress. I mean, a customer says like, okay, now I'm really I don't know it anymore. I don't see the forest for the trees. There's so much technology, and then the safe decision is to not go smart because then at least you don't make the wrong decision. So my advice from Signify is, of course, that we are mostly deploying this technology with big corporates because big corporates want to experiment with startups, but they also want to have, let's say, bigger companies which are usually a little bit slower in deploying technology, but they're much easier to do business with if they want to deploy it on a global scale. So if you are a multinational, you go to Signify because you know that if you can have the same technology, whether it's in London, New York, Amsterdam, or Shanghai, we will do it in the same way. And we
Yeah,
also collaborate a lot with, let's say, with partners which are in other domains. So partners which are in HVAC, for example, is there's a lot of partnerships there because, like I said, the occupancy insights and the temperature are really useful for them, and then they can use that data and have that platform. But on the other hand, we also really encourage the startups because a lot of those companies want to start with one location quickly to demonstrate the benefits, and then the scaling up may be different. But there's so much to do. It's just a matter of like what you're doing is advising people to go for it. But also every project will have a different ecosystem of companies that go with it. And I guess the more projects that we do, that's what we see now also is we have companies where we already done that, which are usually companies who have a really strong vision and a CTO who knows who he's doing, so they are in charge of where they want to go. And
yeah,
then we see companies who don't have that, who don't need to have that, which is more like the majority of the market, and they will reference to what others have done. So they will kind of see like, okay, if this ecosystem is working, I would like to have that as a reference and start with that, and then still puzzle around with your trusted suppliers where you want to go. But it's good to see that at least the entire industry is not at the same speed, but is all moving in the same direction.
Yeah, well, I think that's a very nice conclusion. We're not moving in the same speed, but we're going the right way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's cool. Well, thank you very much, Tom, and hope to speak to you soon. And have a nice day.
Thank you, Walter. Thank you, everyone. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye bye.